Hey, we're live with the Harrowings in the Passing Show, or the bunker, as the case may be. It's the bunker right now. And we don't have but two of us here. I don't see who they are. Greg Gusa, Siragusa. Sorry, my eyes don't work so well. Tiny font. And this is just me musing a little bit about today because I just had a really nice chat with Kevin Gard, who's a producer and manager and director and all kinds of stuff, really. He's been doing a lot of things with his life. I could give you a little rundown of the whole thing here. He's an artist in management for Aerosmith and PKA Management. He was with Aerosmith as a co-manager 1988 to 1995. During one of the most successful periods of their history. He was also founded PKA Management, which I think is still running, president and CEO of that, a Boston-based firm, manages national talent and provides business consulting. He has represented acts such as Rockapella. That's kind of cool. Kind of a cappella as well. I was doing earlier a talk with Sonny Triple, my vocal coach, and we were doing some a cappella stuff. And, it's been a good day. I've had a lot of interaction over Substack with different people. And I hope that those of you who do tune into this might get a chance to take a look at it. Harriet C. is here. A.R. Suridhar is here. Thank you for the hearts. I bet that's Harriet's hearts going up there. I'm going to be talking with Dr. Gabriella Kurosi tomorrow, after getting up early in the morning to catch my friend in Denmark, Tina Pippi Ditlevsen, who has appeared not as a person on an interview here yet, but as a subject of sorts of some of my conversations, because she really helped me out when I was living in Denmark very much. We go back. Just as chatting with some other people online through Messenger, through all kinds of different means. And, I haven't been out of the house. I've been talking to my wife here and there as she's on vacation for the break between Christmas and New Year's. She'll be going back to work on January 5th. I'm looking for work myself, looking for what's going to be next. I did pick up a new paid subscriber, for which I'm really grateful. That was very nice. And people can do that for each other. We can be paid subscribers. I like to tell my paid subscribers here that you are my board of directors, by hook or by crook. If you want to try to direct me, you're welcome to. I don't know if I can take direction. I think I can, and I would like to have more direction. I hired a coach, among other things, who tuned in to my talk with Sonny Triple while I was singing Autopsy with her, a Fairport Convention tune about philosophizing. So it goes something to the effect of, "You must philosophize, but why must you bore me to tears?" The female vocalist addressing a male. And yeah, I could probably bore somebody to tears. You're crying the eyes. I know there's a line in there, something to the effect of, you spend all your time crying the hours into years. And I love that idea. The hours become years. Then here we are counting down the last hours to New Year's, 2026. 2025 was quite a year. We saw the inauguration of Donald J. Trump. We saw what he's doing with the power that we've invested in him, because we did not want, apparently collectively, to give the responsibility to the vice president, Kamala Harris. And she's written her book, 107 Days, which is about how long she got to run her campaign before the election because of the way the decisions were made. And, I like to say that we have all got a hand in this. I've got to look my part in it. What actions have I taken personally that have resulted in the world being the way it is? Being born in 1963, November 22nd of that year, I was very young, about 9 months old, a little over. And John F. Kennedy was shot. Aldous Huxley died that day, as did C.S. Lewis. We lost 3 people right there and then who are impactful to our lives. Kennedy's visions, the positive ones, came forward. His Challenges were many. The Bay of Pigs invasion was not a really great move, I don't think. The way in which we handled ourselves in international relations was pretty close to brinksmanship. And, it wasn't just him, it was the whole of the el- elite governing bodies, corporate minds, as well as other individuals who may or may not have understood things as well as they needed to. I mean, if you really understood Ho Chi Minh, you probably would not have conducted the Vietnam War in the way it was conducted. If you understood something about the corruption involved in the South Vietnamese government and the kind of actions that were taken. And poor Lyndon Johnson, if he was indeed, you know, not involved in getting himself into that situation as a president, I don't know. Um, he could recognize that he had done some pretty boneheaded moves and didn't try for reelection as a result. He just couldn't. He got it in 64, but he wouldn't run in 68. And his vice president did run, didn't win. And the former vice president under Eisenhower did win 68 to 72. We see what happened there. And then 72 until his resignation. I'm not sure exactly what year that was. Was it 74 or was it 75? But when he did resign and Ford came in, Ford had his challenges. And then we had Jimmy Carter. So I look at all that was playing out in the background of my youth as I was growing up. By the time Jimmy Carter was elected, it was 1976, and he came into office in 77. And then they had the terrible things happen in Iran, and Reagan came in. And I think really we were blackmailed practically by the Iranians to put Reagan into power instead of having Carter come back for another 4 years. And of course, there was a lot of warfare. The invasion of Grenada was one thing that was happening around 83, I believe. I remember 83 pretty well because I was going through my own crises around then at 20 years old. And then, it goes on. Reagan, then George H.W. Bush, followed by Clinton, 2 terms of Clinton, and that neoliberal or neo whatever that is. I have my serious doubts about whether putting those people into power was a good idea, but you certainly saw how we tried to get them out of power, and ineffectually as it was. And I realized around that time, during the Monica Lewinsky things and such, and how Clinton perjured himself, that we really don't care. And that set the stage for the whole, things we're experiencing right now. And you've got photographs of Bill and Hillary yucking it up with Donald and Melania at Donald's wedding, I think. And I don't think those are doctored. I think that they're all one big club. And as George Carlin told us, we're not part of it. And I've got a few others joined us. Penny Lane joined. Hi, Penny. I'm really grateful for anybody who comes into the door. And I was watching Penny talk about her film that's come out recently, and it was about children's things. If You're Happy and You Know It, documentary. I really want to see it. I haven't seen it yet. But Penny Lane is the director, or I think you're the director and creator of this film. I've also got Mrs. Millie, a Magnolia Observer, has joined Marwar. I'm trying to get some traction with this whole transmission of the signal through the noise. As I mentioned, I had Kevin Gard on just recently, who is responsible for, among other things, Aerosmith, The Making of Pump documentary. Hi, I'm Miss Millie. And, I really did enjoy talking with him. He's got some other irons in the fire right now. There's a YouTube that he shared in the chat, but we were chatting to each other and I didn't pull it down, so I need to go get it. And I probably will. But the conversation is now up. We did it on Google Meet because we couldn't make Substack Live work for us. But it was fun. And, I was set up to talk to him because Michelle Ezrick, uh, mutual friend, director of The Wavy Gravy Story, Saint Misbehavin', was, well, instrumental in saying that, "Hey, Hal, you love to come on your show, but you should have Keith on." And Keith's got a great story, and he does. And we've really only scratched the surface because that's what Harrowings does, right? It just takes those tines behind the tractor and scratches the surface. And as we scratch the surface of things, as we're going over these, just barely getting into that superficial front we put on, we eventually start to till up and churn up stuff for creative work together. And I can't stress that enough, that we do this together, that nobody is out here on their own, and, on it goes. I'm very lucky in my friends. I mean, I found Michelle because there was a Wavy Gravy birthday party happening out in, the outside of Philly, the Ardmore Music Hall. And if you don't know about Wavy Gravy, he was originally named Hugh Romney, and Hugh was kind of a beat poet in Greenwich Village. He had gone there following Martha Graham from Boston. And, yeah, so what happened was he was on a Texas pop festival gig where he was trying to maintain some order among the hippies out there in the Texas Pop Festival in 1970, and BB King was coming on stage. He was gonna do a free bit for them, and they, needed to clear the stage, but Wavy was laying on the stage, and BB came up to him and looked down at him and said, "You Wavy Gravy?" And he said, "Yes, sir." And, he said, "Well, Wavy Gravy, I can work around you." But Wavy picked up on that. He said, "That's a really great clown name." And he had recently started doing some clowning for children in the hospital because he'd get beaten up by the cops sometimes, and he had been clowning for these children, and then he went to a protest, and he didn't get beaten up. He was usually the fool, and they didn't mind beating a fool up, but the cops didn't like to beat up a clown. They didn't wanna be seen beating up Santa Claus either, as he pointed out. This is Wavy, and the movie, this is the 10th anniversary edition of Michelle's film. Anyway, so Michelle did another film after this, and after I met her, I asked her what she was doing next, and she told me she was working on a film on Daryl Hammond, and she didn't know what she was gonna call it yet. And I said, "Well, I'd like to do what I can to make it, happen. So let me see how I can help you." And so I did. I gave her some funding to help her realize the film. And then I saw it being screened as I was coming away from one of the weekends of unlimited devotion that happened at the Ardmore Music Hall after 2016, after that time when I met her. And yeah, so I was just really, really happy to be able to help with that. And Cracked Up is the name of that movie, crackedupmovie.com. Um, Daryl Hammond's story. And it is largely focused on trauma-informed care because he was literally tortured by his own mother. And he learned, though, that he could, do little things to, like, I impersonate movie characters and, cartoon characters, and that would sort of win her approval and keep her from torturing him. So crackedupmovie.com is one thing, the Wavy Gravy Story, Saint Misbehavin' is another one. This one is, as you see, autographed by Michelle Ezrick, zooming in on it for me, and by, um, Jordan Romney, that's their son. He was originally named Howdy Do Good Tomahawk Truck Stop Gravy. And there's Wavy G's autograph on it as well. Good fella. And Jahanara, his wife. The former Bonnie Beecher. And what's interesting about Bonnie Beecher there is she was the North Country girl that Bob Dylan talks about on the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. She, got around a bit, she was up in, I think, Minnesota, somewhere near where Bob was born and raised, and they had apparently been close. And then when Bob gets to New York, he ends up rooming with Hugh Romney, over the gaslight, where that old wooden stove where their hats were hung, their songs were sung. That's from Bob Dylan's Dream off of the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And, then Wavy goes out west, and he finds this girl in some place in California where she's making, hamburgers with peanuts in them. And one thing leads to another. They end up together, and, they were in a kinda commune situation in a small house, and the merry pranksters stopped in, and there's, like, a bunch of people in this house, and the landlord comes by and says, "Whoa, you cannot have this many people in one house." But around the same time they're gonna be evicted, a guy up on the hill who had a pig farm, he had a stroke, and they needed somebody to slop them hogs. So they went up there to do that kinda work, and they became known as the hog farm, and that commune is still going all these years later. They own some land out at Laytonville, California, Black Oak Ranch, it's called, and they have a camp out there called Camp on a Rainbow for performing arts. You see, Jean Hara wanted to go to Sufi camp, so Wavy would have to look after their son, and then there were other parents who also wanted to have their children taken care of as they went to Sufi camp. And, so he ended up having a camp, and next year it was Camp on a Rainbow, and they've gone into 50 years of this performing arts camp. There's a session for adults too, and so that's another thing I support. I'm also wearing another thing related to all this underneath my Reebok thing here. I don't know if it's gonna be visible or not. Oh, yeah, a little bit of it. Seva. You can't really see much of it. That's the symbol for Seva. It's Sanskrit for service, and Seva tries to do as much as they can to alleviate unnecessary blindness in the world. So if you're looking for an end of the year donation, how about eyesight to the blind? You know how that got started? Steve Jobs was aware that Larry Brilliant, among other people, were instrumental in eradicating smallpox, Larry Brilliant being a doctor who's also a very close friend of Wavy Gravy. So Steve Jobs gets them all together out in some place in Minnesota or Michigan or something. I forget where they were. But that's not really important where they were. They were just out there in one of those M states up in the northern area, North Country. And Jahanara was there, the former Bonnie Beecher and Wavy and Ram Dass and Larry Brilliant and all these UN scientists who have been involved in the eradication of smallpox. And they decided, we've got to attack something else. What's it going to be? And people were talking about, you got to do things, you got to take action. And then Ram Dass would be over there saying, no, let's just be for a while and let it emerge, let it flow, or whatever. And that was really frustrating for the doers. And then there was the beers. And then there was Wavy over there going, doobie doobie doo. And that's just such deep wisdom, right? It's one of the things talked about in the film. I'm not really getting anything original. That's it. Um, yeah, what else do I want to talk about? There's so many things to talk about. And I want to talk about it with other people, right? I'd love to have, as I saw Penny Lane had joined, I've invited her to be a guest. I see the snowboarding blog has joined. I don't know you. I don't know many of you who have joined. I've had Ashley Schmidt on before, impromptu. Thank you for doing that, Ashley. Appreciate that. Harriet C. has been a guest as well once, and I've been a guest on her show, Women's Perspectives. I have a woman side to me too. I think all of us, to be whole, we have our anima if we're men, we have animus if we're female. And that eternal dialogue between the anima and the animus is what I experience all the time with my wife, right? She's got this idea of things are this way. The Father's law lives within her. And she didn't have the greatest father figure. And who does? George W. Bush was her father. George William Bush, the Latrobe but actually he's born in Export, Pennsylvania, and he was, a Latrobe rolling rock forklift driver. Legally blind, as it turned out. They had, like, marks on his thing. You could see out of the peripheral vision, but he didn't have, like, the macular degeneration thing was happening congenitally. His, sister had it too, I believe, and, yeah, it's kinda tragic. At the same time, it's kind of interesting, that he would be a legally blind forklift driver at Rolling Rock Brewery for most of his career. His wife, took care of him, took care of the driving, took care of the house, and, Evelyn Bush has been no longer with us now, but she lived to almost 92 in, Latrobe, Pennsylvania, was in her own home for most of that time. And, my wife, when she gets really rigid about something, I realize, I get all emotional about it. That's my anima. That's her animus. And, when it comes down to it, I'm just gonna have to fold and, go with because she's usually right. That idea of I'm Mr. Right, she's Mrs. Always Right? That's, part of our dynamic. I love her, and it's wonderful to have a partner who you really respect and love and cherish and would go, you know, basically anywhere with and feel happy. I don't really usually wanna get away with her from her. I get away with stuff all the time. She lets me get away with a lot, probably because she feels a little guilty about things. I don't know. She knows that, our lives didn't turn out the way we were hoping. I got a postcard the other day, this one, and it's about stories. This is from um, Barbara of projectken.org. There you go. She's out here on Substack. We met through that. She gave me a call. We talked about story because, one of the things I'm doing is trying to protect and preserve my father's legacy. And around here somewhere, I have a copy of the Colonial Williamsburg Journal I was going to pick up and show, but I've just been recirculating all my books, including The Spirit of Music by Victor Wooten. Good book, that. We were talking about that with Sonny earlier today because I was working through Sweat, which is going to be my theme song. The Wooten brothers did a tune called Sweat fairly recently. I want you to remember to be kind. There's my bookmark. What to do with that? I'll probably stick it into Becoming the Instrument, Lessons on Self-Mastery from Music to Life by Kenny Werner. Now, Kenny's a jazz piano improvisational kind of guy. And he has this great book called Effortless Mastery, and Becoming the Instrument is kind of the sequel to that. Becoming the instrument means so many different things, right? As a singer, I am my own instrument. As a fifer, I am my own instrument. I'm putting air through the fife to get a tone out of that thing. Isn't that a beautiful piece of wood? Coca-Cola, 1990, thereabout. Got it from Tim Sutphin at the Fife and Drum Building when I had broken or lost my original fife. I don't know how that happened or where that went. This is my 50th anniversary African Blackwood fife. You can see the varnish on it kind of worn off around there. I've used this one a lot since 2008 when I got it. It's got lovely machine turnings on the ferrules as well. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the little dates on it there, 1958 to 2008. They started with 2 fifers and 2 snare drummers and grew from there till by the time I was in the Corps, there were over 100 of us. The 1976 photograph of the Corps with me in my corporal hat, I had finally made it up into just the higher ranks of the junior corps, about to join the senior corps. And it had us standing in a semicircle or semicircles. There were several layers of us in front of the governor's palace, the Capitol, in the little circle down there at the end of Duke of Gloucester Street. And they had a cherry picker up above us so that they could photograph of us. And so cherished possession I have around here somewhere. I think it's up there. And I'm just babbling. I'm just doing what I see my friend Patty Smith. He turned 79 today, by the way. Patty Smith did. Happy birthday to Patty. What else do I want to tell you about that? Well, she's my kinda, model for doing these things. She doesn't usually go as long as I have. I've gone 25 minutes already just babbling away about whatever I find important. Um, One of the things I really like is this beat. I don't know if you all caught beat. Music is really what it makes it for me. Music, art, and literature together. And beat is a reference to the literature, to the literary movement, the beat movement, Jack Kerouac and company. And somewhere around here, I have Brian Hassett's The Hitchhiker's Guide to Jack Kerouac. I don't see it handy, but it's here somewhere. Oh, here's something of Brian's. So not that one. What is this one? This is it. This is it. The Hitchhiker's Guide to Jack Kerouac, Brian Hassett. I'm going to have him on hopefully for a series in the coming year. Brian's a really interesting guy. I find life lessons from McClure. Yeah, when we get together, we just riff. Right, we'll go one thing to the next, and usually I find it fascinating. But beat as a literary movement is also about this band. Oh, there we go. Steve Vai, Tony Levin. Steve Vai's over here, and you get Adrian Belew down in the center there, and Danny Carey on the drums. Danny Carey of Tool. Great, great band. I had front row seat in the Warner Theater when they passed by here, and sitting right in front of Tony Levin's feet. I've got this great picture of him playing the bass, the three of a perfect pair bass with funk fingers. Funk fingers actually came as a suggestion from Peter Gabriel. Tony Levin played bass for him as well. I was able to go to the 70th birthday party of this guy, Jeff Skunk Baxter. Speed of Heat is the album. And he teaches at the Pentagon, teaches improvisation with Dan Aykroyd. You wouldn't think that would be a thing, but it is. Anyway, that was kind of fun to talk about. I was sitting at a table with Roethlisberger, I think his name was, a representative who was responsible for getting Skunk Baxter into the Pentagon as a consultant. And he was responsible in large part for the wickering of the Standard Missile System to be an ABM, anti-ballistic missile system, part of our not a Star Wars defense, but missile defense agency kind of efforts. Yeah, you never know, you never know what people might have up their sleeve. And you also never know what people can learn from each other. So that's why I talk. That's why I go on. And I've had 13 of you join me here. I often will be going down the street filming the passing show. I was sharing a little earlier today, Ronnie Lane is my inspiration for that. And Ronnie Lane was a Baba lover. Pete Townsend sort of connected Ronnie Lane to Mayor Baba. And I'm connected to Mayor Baba a little bit, in a way, in a manner of speaking. And somewhere here, I was just seeing it. So I've been rearranging my books. So, yeah. When I was in Randolph-Macon, Charles Haynes, the author of this book, yeah, that way. There it is. Charles Haynes was the director of religious life for the campus of Randolph-Macon College in Ashland, Virginia. He was also part of the inner circle of Mayor Baba before Mayor Baba dropped the body. And there's photographs of Charles as a young kid embracing Mayor Baba. In fact, there may be one here. I don't know. But this was Charles's thesis or dissertation work, really, The Awakener. And when I went down to see The Who and was on front row again, sitting in front of Pete Townsend, I had this in my coat pocket. And you know what's weird was that was the day Charlie Kirk was shot. It was supposed to happen about 3 or 4 weeks earlier, but they canceled like the day of the show and postponed it till September 10th. So that wasn't canceled per se, but it was stopped. Charles is humble enough. He didn't put this picture of him with Mayor Baba in here, doesn't look like, but he's got lots of pictures of Mayor Baba. So that's sort of one of the main influences on me as well. I'm a theosophist. I'm also a Baba lover. And I don't know, there's a lot of things that I'm skeptical about that I don't really know if I believe or not, but I do what I can to believe. I had Philip Schallmer on also. You know that United Air commercial where they'd have bum 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 ba da 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 da. That triumphant George Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue music for Fly the Friendly Skies. That was to Philip Chalmer, and I've got a book of his, My Bipolar Reality, which is really an interesting read. Highly recommend to Philip Chalmer. He also wrote another one I've got around here somewhere. Somewhere. Probably take some digging. It's called Tall Tales of a Short Childhood. Here's another really great one that I highly recommend people seek out. Something Good for a Change. That's by Wavy Gravy. It's random notes on peace through living. Weird and wonderful, the New York Times said. A master satirist, Tom Wolfe, said. And there's other quotes on the back from Rolling Stone, Ram Dass, Paul Kantner, Paul Krasner, and The Village Voice. And yeah, so I was really, really lucky to get a hold of it. It was somebody else's, somebody named Roland, and I autographed Wavy's signature Labyrinth. Love that. And what else do I want to tell you? Got to hop off because of work in the morning, but thanks for the great insight into your creative universe. Take care. Yeah, thank you for that. That I have a creative universe, that I have a universe at all. I'm definitely, trying to pull together different voices, give amplification. The way I look at it, I'm a node on a non hierarchical network. There is nobody here better or worse than anybody else. People are different. But by and large, we're all made of the same stuff. And we have an opportunity to share our differences with each other and to enrich and beautify each other's lives in a lot of ways. If I pick up your signal, if I pick up what you're laying down, there's a chance I can take that and transmit it on to the next thing. And maybe somebody will pick up what we're laying down and transmit it on further. And light and love and compassion and healing and unconditional love and acceptance. That's what I think most of us are looking for from each other. And it's so hard to come by in this world. There's so much fear, so much irritation at anybody spending any time. If you're happy and you know it, then pass it on and be happy. Don't worry, be happy was one of Mayor Baba's main messages to the world. Don't worry, be happy. If you remember the Bobby McFerrin song, he was directly channeling Mayor Baba and said as much. But, a lot of people don't know about Mayor Baba. A lot of people don't know about a lot of things. I don't know a lot about a lot of things. I don't know a lot about you all necessarily, but you all can make yourselves known to me, and I can then make you known to everybody in my network, and on it goes. Not everybody loves each other. It's dang shame, but it's true. And we have the capacity to do it, though. And we could change the world in a heartbeat. I'm pretty sure if we were willing to risk being vulnerable, to risk extending ourselves beyond the current, noise that's being generated, to try to keep us divided and in check and from linking arms and being the change we want to see in the world. There have been little efforts at that on occasion. There was a night when they brought together every big star they could think of to do We Are the World. You remember that in the 80s? And then there was the Hands Across America. There's the Million Man March, after all. There's the whole, I've forgotten exactly what it was called, but 1963 March on Washington. I guess it was called the March on Washington. And you can see where Martin Luther King stood when he gave his I Have a Dream speech. If you go up on the Lincoln Memorial, it's there. You can see the exact spot he was standing when that speech was delivered. I know Patch Adams was in the audience when that was being done. Bob Dylan was there. Joan Baez was there. Wavy Gravy was there. He was Hugh Romney at that point. But yeah, so that march for civil rights was pivotal. They passed a law in 64 to give those ain't got much a little more, as Bruce Hornsby, who's from my hometown, sung. I found out recently that one of the guys I went to high school with and was pretty close friends with at the time, went on to be a Navy pilot, flying FA-18s off the Midway for Gulf War I. He married Bruce's sister. He's his brother-in-law. I had no idea. And that was kind of funny. Small world. Bruce Hornsby is who I was thinking of with That's Just the Way It Is. Some things will never change, but don't you believe them? Is the refrain. We can change the world, but we have to have a will to do it. And we have to be willing to make ourselves a little uncomfortable, perhaps. Perhaps, or maybe we'll be a lot more comfortable if we're willing to reach out, to try, to be awake and aware. One of the many things I have around here, there it is. It's so thick, it's hard to miss, is G.I. Gurdjieff's Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, picked up in Lost City Books and over in Adams, Morgan. It was one of those books that called out to me. And G.I. Gurdjieff, bless his soul, was instrumental, before he died in 1949, I believe, in starting something or defining something, I guess, called the Fourth Way. And the Fourth Way says that basically in our daily lives, if we're awake and aware and mindful of what we're doing, we pay attention, the most precious commodity we have is our attention. It's the most generous gift we can give each other is our attention. Well, if we pay attention, if we're awake and aware, we will notice that many of us, if not most, but many of us are pretty much asleep, unconscious, not mindful, and just going through in a very automatic way from dawn to dusk. Most of us don't think so. Most of us would say, oh no, I'm awake, I'm aware. But if we really pay attention, and he would do these movements to dance, and he composed music, and his followers were put through their paces and doing manual labor in particular. Many different challenges were set before them to wake them up. There's echo effects of G.I. Gurdjieff's work still emanating. The work is being done. And there are a fairly small number of people probably who know about G.I. Gurdjieff and his work, but I think it's expanding. All this stuff is available now. We have the right to know. And for the longest time, the right to know was not there. And took effort to know things, much more so than it does now. These days, we have to be what I call willfully ignorant. Basic things have been laid down for us and that we can pass on to others. There's so much. It's hard to cram it all into a half-hour talk, and I've almost been here 40 minutes. I think I will wrap it up. It's getting later. It's 14 of you and me, and I'm really grateful for those who have stopped in. I am awed at some of the names. Of course, everybody's equal. Nobody's better or worse than anybody else. The more I feel that way, the better I am than everybody else. That's the old Danish Jantelaw. It's called. I don't know if you all know Danish culture much, but it's out there. Apparently, it's also in Sweden. There's a Swedish-Danish writer who came up with Jantelaw. Maybe he was Norwegian, Danish, I forget. I'll have to go dig it back up again and double check because I can. Or maybe it's not that important. The main thrust is that really we are all equal in the eyes of the universe. And therefore, we should treat each other with the equal amount of respect. But when I see certain names, like I know Penny Lane has done this film called If You're Happy and You Know It, and was talking recently to Austin Kleon, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who did like Show Your Work and other artist books like this, things about trying to take your creative work and really put it out there. Um, yeah, it was good to catch that little dialogue they were having. And when I saw her name here, I was really pleased. And I'm really pleased to see all your names all the way down the list there. I put up crackedupmovie.com as a suggestion about trauma informed care. I really think this is an important topic. Most of us are traumatized primates, and we are acting out on our trauma in a lot of cases unconsciously. And we'd do better if we knew better. That's another thing. Also, every cent we spend is a vote for the kind of world we are co creating. We are responsible for the world we are seeing. There are no them, there is only us on this planet. Think of the pale blue dot by Carl Sagan and be the change you want to see in the world, as Mahatma Gandhi did not say. One of my texts out there's actually has a hallmark or a little URL thing there that goes to the debunking of Gandhi having said that. But it sounds good, and it is good that we be the change we want to see in the world. Okay, thank you all for joining. Out here, 41 minutes and 52.